In a small village surrounded by quiet hills and old trees, there lived an old woman named Margaret. Her house was simple. The paint on the walls had faded with time, and the wooden porch creaked whenever someone stepped on it. But what made the house special wasn't the building. It was the woman who lived inside it. Margaret was nearly 90 years old. Her hair had turned silver, and her hands carried the gentle wrinkles of a long life. Yet there was something about her that people couldn't explain. She always looked peaceful. Not the kind of peace people pretend to have. Real peace. The kind that comes from understanding something most people spend their entire lives searching for. Every evening, Margaret sat on her old rocking chair outside her house. She watched the sunset slowly paint the sky with orange and pink colors. And almost every evening, someone from the village would stop by to talk to her. Young people especially loved visiting Margaret because Margaret had stories. Stories about life, mistakes, love, loss, and lessons. But more than that, Margaret had wisdom. And one day a young man came to her with a question that would reveal the secret she had carried her entire life. The young man who had everything. The young man's name was Daniel. Daniel was 28 years old. On the outside, he had everything most people dream about: a successful career, a beautiful apartment in the city, a nice car, money in the bank. People often admired him. Some even envied him. But inside Daniel's heart, there was a strange emptiness. He worked long hours every day. He chased promotions. He chased success. He chased recognition. Yet every night when he returned home, something felt missing. He couldn't explain it. One evening, while visiting his hometown, Daniel heard people talking about Margaret. They said she had lived a long life and had discovered something important about happiness. Daniel decided to visit her. When he arrived at her house, Margaret was sitting in her rocking chair, watching the sunset. She looked up and smiled warmly. "Hello," she said softly. "You look like someone carrying a heavy question." Daniel laughed slightly. "Is it that obvious?" Margaret nodded. "Most people your age carry the same one." Daniel sat down beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply watched the sky. Finally, Daniel asked the question that had been troubling him for years. What really matters in life? Margaret didn't answer immediately. Instead, she poured 2 cups of tea and handed one to him. "Before I answer," she said gently, "let me tell you a story." The illusion of success. "When I was young," Margaret began, "I believed success was everything. I grew up in a poor family. My parents worked hard just to survive. So I made a promise to myself. I promised I would become successful. And I did." Margaret smiled slightly as she remembered those years. "I studied hard. I worked day and night. I wanted people to respect me. And eventually, they did. I got a good job. I bought a big house. I had everything society told me I should want." She paused and looked at Daniel. But something strange happened. "The more I achieved, the less satisfied I felt." Daniel leaned forward. He understood that feeling perfectly. Margaret continued, "I kept thinking the next achievement would make me happy. The next promotion, the next house, the next goal. But happiness never stayed. It always disappeared after a while." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's exactly how I feel," he admitted. Margaret smiled. "Yes," she said, "most people feel that way. Because we are taught the wrong things about happiness." The moment that changed everything. Margaret's voice became softer. Then something happened that changed my life forever. My husband, Thomas, became very sick. Daniel listened carefully. For weeks, we stayed in the hospital. The doctors weren't sure if he would survive. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of losing something truly important. Margaret's eyes reflected distant memories. I remember sitting beside his hospital bed one night. The room was quiet. The machines were making soft, beeping sounds. And suddenly I realized something. All the things I spent my life chasing didn't matter anymore. My achievements didn't matter. My money didn't matter. My status didn't matter. The only thing I wanted was more time with the person I loved. She turned toward Daniel. That was the moment I understood what really matters in life. Margaret lifted 3 fingers. There are 3 things that truly matter in life. Daniel leaned closer. He didn't want to miss a single word. First secret, relationships. The first thing that matters is people. At the end of life, no one wishes they had worked more. No one wishes they had bought more things. But almost everyone wishes they had spent more time with the people they love. Margaret pointed toward her garden. You see those roses? My husband planted them for me 50 years ago. He passed away many years ago. But every time they bloom, I remember him. And those memories are worth more than anything money could buy. She looked at Daniel kindly. People are the true wealth of life. Second secret, presence. The second thing that matters is being present. Most people live in 2 places, the past and the future. They regret what already happened, and they worry about what might happen. But life only exists in the present moment. Margaret gestured toward the sunset again. Look at that sky. How many sunsets have you missed because you were busy? How many conversations have you rushed through because you were thinking about work? Happiness hides in small moments. A smile, a quiet walk, a conversation with someone you love. But most people are too distracted to notice. Third secret, purpose. The third thing that matters is purpose. Daniel asked softly, "What do you mean by purpose?" Margaret smiled. Purpose means living in a way that helps others. You don't need to change the whole world. Sometimes purpose is simply being kind. Sometimes it's helping someone who is struggling. Sometimes it's sharing knowledge or encouragement. When your life improves someone else's life, your life gains meaning. The real secret. Daniel sat quietly. Everything Margaret said felt deeply true, but he still had one question. If the secret is so simple, he asked, why do most people miss it? Margaret laughed gently. Because the world is very loud. Society constantly tells us that happiness comes from success, money, and status. But real happiness comes from something much simpler. She looked at him kindly. The real secret of life is this. Life isn't about collecting things. It's about collecting meaningful moments. It's about loving people. And it's about leaving the world a little better than you found it. The final advice. The sun had almost disappeared behind the hills. Daniel finished his tea. Before leaving, he asked one final question. If you could live your life again, he said, what would you do differently? Margaret thought for a moment. Then she answered softly, I would worry less. I would spend more time with the people I love. I would forgive faster. And I would remind myself every day that life is shorter than we think. She looked directly into his eyes. Don't wait until you're old to understand this. Start now. Call the people you love. Spend time with them. Be kind. Be present. Because one day, when everything else fades away,